Hey guys, today is May 4th, so yes, May the 4th be with you. We are looking at continuing on in my KonMari Method purging thing. Feeling really good about the closet that we finished up yesterday. I went to Target and I got a couple more storage bins to finish packing up all of the like the winter onesies and like the finished like storing all of my other clothes. So it's looking really good in there and I'm really happy about it. So clothing done. Now we're gonna move on to books. So books are gonna be tricky. I actually just spent like 30 minutes reviewing all of what she had to say in her book about books. So I don't know if I ever mentioned, but I do have the first book that she has, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And then I actually bought the second one that goes with it, which is the Spark Joy. Basically, it's the exact same thing as the first book, but it goes into more detail about certain categories, especially with like the miscellaneous stuff. Some things that she doesn't touch on as much in the first book. So I actually have them both and they're actually quite useful because even though it's the same information and it's the same like theory and it's the same method that she's talking about, she talks about it differently in this book. I feel like both of these are good to have. Because like I mentioned before, because like I said before, this one goes into more depth when it comes to like the kitchen or like hobby things or even like hardware stuff. So I'll probably talk about this one more when we get to those categories, but I'm still going to be sticking with this book, which is the first one. And I finished off clothing yesterday. And it's funny because like as I was doing it and cleaning it up and organizing and stuff, Chaz came home and he's like, wow. He's like, this looks really good. He's like, I should probably start going through my stuff too. And I'm like, yeah. You should. So today with clothing being done, we are moving on to books. Now books aren't really, I don't know, like I have interesting thoughts regarding books because I grew up in a huge book reading home. Like my dad was very much a connoisseur of literature, all sorts of literature, especially when he like lost his job and went back to school. He was a huge book reader and we all read books tremendously. And my sister is a huge book reader. Like I swear that girl can read like, I swear she must read like 2 or 3 books a week, like completely. She reads so much. Like reading is definitely her hobby. For me though, not so much. Like I used to read a lot, especially as a kid. I read a ton. But then high school came along and, you know, I read a little bit. Like I never got into Harry Potter. I never got into like a series of unfortunate events, like all those like really popular kid series. Like I never really did that in high school. Like I wasn't a huge reader. I definitely, when like Lord of the Rings came out, as far as like the movies, I definitely read like that whole series like immediately and I loved it. But reading for me has never been like my hobby. It's not the thing that I do when I don't have anything else to do. Like crafting and art is more of my thing. But despite that, I still have collected a lot of books, like a lot of books, and some books from like my college years, some books that like are my big stack of like, oh, I intend to read this someday book, and also like reference books and things like that. So even though I'm not a big reader, I still have lots and lots of books. So when we had our floors getting redone in our living room and we had to box everything up and like shove everything into our bedroom to get it out of the way. And then I started bringing all of these boxes back out. I'm like, I need to get rid of these books. Like I'm not reading any of these. Like I read them in college. Like most of them were like my college books. And so I'm like, I don't read these anymore. And that was like, as I was just starting to read The Life-Changing Magic. And so I had just barely started reading this book and it was already like working on me. So I had already kind of started getting rid of some of my books. But I only got rid of like maybe a third of the books that I have. So I'm not quite sure how this is gonna go because we have 3 bookcases in our living room. They were at one point pretty much full of books, but then I got rid of maybe like a third of them when I started putting everything back when the floors were finished. So I'm going to take all those books out of the bookcases, put them on the floor, and then I have 2 boxes downstairs of books that were in storage. I'm not quite sure how this is going to go. Like I don't know, because I'm just not a big book reader. Like I almost want to think like I'm not going to have any books by the time I'm done with this. And how do I feel about that? Because book reading is such a huge part of my family culture. Like my family, like my parents and my sisters, like they're all huge book readers, like every single one of them. My 2 older sisters definitely read books. My younger sister is definitely like hardcore into books. And I'm like, like I enjoy reading, and I definitely like when I want to read a book, I'm super excited about it and I get super obsessed about it and I read it incessantly. But honestly, like just in my period of life right now, I just don't have time to read. I really don't. But at the same rate, like I want to read, like I really do, because honestly, truth time, I feel left out when my family talks about books and they talk about books that they've all read, and you know they have that bond of books that they read, and it's just like I don't. Like I feel left out. I feel completely left out when they talk about books. And so maybe me holding on to these books even though I don't really read them is me trying to fit in with my family. Like I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. So I am definitely guilty of buying books with the intention of someday I'm going to read these. And most of them are recommendations from my family. But then there are other cases when like Mamrie Hart writes a book and I go out and I buy that book and I read it immediately. So it's not that I don't have interest in books. It just depends on the type of book. Like Eric Larson, who wrote Devil in the White City, wrote a book about the sinking of the Lusitania. I bought that book the week it came out and I read it within 2 days. So I enjoy reading. When Game of Thrones came out, when the TV show first started, I bought all of the books that were available and I read the books. Like I've read every single book of Game of Thrones except for the newest one because I don't have time. So it's like I enjoy reading and I will make time for it when it's a book that interests me. Not saying that the books that I have don't interest me, but I think I just bought them because I was like, oh, I want something to read. Like again, I'm trying to fit in with my family. I'm trying to fit in with my sisters because they love going to Barnes and Noble. And so I'm like, okay, I'll go with you. And then it's like, but I don't read. Like I do, but I don't anyway. I feel stupid saying I don't read because I do. I do read. It's just not my go-to for hobbying, I guess. I don't know. I feel really stupid saying that I don't read. And I know I shouldn't feel stupid for saying I don't read, but I just don't. I really don't. Anyway, I'm gonna go pull all my books, put them on the floor. I'll show you how all that looks when I get there. So this is my bookcase right now. As I mentioned before we had all of the flooring done, it was pretty much full of books, and now it's probably like it's like 2/3 of the books I used to have. I also have 2 storage boxes full of books. These are all of the books. Let's get cracking. All right, so I got that done in like 40 minutes, I think. But yeah, I think I've made some pretty significant progress. I feel a little bit guilty about some of those things but anyway, let me just show you. This is what's left over. So all this along here is stuff I'm going to either be taking a half price, donating, or asking friends to see if they want, and if they don't want it, I'll most likely recycle those. These are a bunch of like church books, like manuals from like religion courses and stuff like that. So I'm going to ask friends if anybody wants those. The books that I am keeping are over here. So these are books that spoke to me, books that I would read again if I had the time. And I would reread some of these books before starting some of the books that I have in this pile, which were books that I intended to read someday, but I never actually got around to doing it. So the fact that I would pick one of these books before reading some of these other books that I have picked up intending to read at some point, I think was kind of a big indicator to me that I should probably get rid of that book. There are some books in that pile there of things that I'm keeping that I still haven't read yet. There's probably like 4 books in there that I'm like, I want to read this someday. I just haven't gotten around to it. And so I think I'm going to hold on to those, but I'm going to like go through them again. Like I'm going to go through those books that I intend to keep one more time, just to make sure that I really do enjoy the things that I have. But yeah, so that's it. Like that went a lot faster than I expected, and I feel good about it. Like I'm not as like liberated as I was with the clothes, and I don't know, maybe that means I need to get rid of more because I haven't quite felt that like peace yet about it. I don't know. I'm gonna look through them one more time and just make sure that these are genuinely books that I'm like, yes, these are the books. We'll find out. I'll figure this out. Okay, so I have gone through the books that I want to keep a second time, and I've actually weeded out more of the things that I don't necessarily want. And an interesting little thing that I went through was with this little set of books right here, because I thought it was interesting. So I have these little miniature classics that I found at Barnes and Noble either like 3 or 4 years ago. They're just classics, but they're in like these super cute mini kind of pocketbook kind of form. And I have Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, Emma, and Persuasion. So these are basically all of the Jane Austen books that I have, and then I love Jane Eyre. Like that is my favorite book. Like I've reread that thing so many times. So I have these cute little like pocketbooks, and like when I first went through these books, I'm like, yes, I'm keeping these, and I put them in my to keep pile. But then when I was going through it a second time and I actually like looked at these books, I realized that when I first picked them up, I held them as one big piece like this. When I decided, oh, I want to have these. But then I remembered that the true method when dealing with a series is to take each book individually and hold it. And I realized like that's what I had done. Like I had grabbed this whole thing, treating it like a series, and was like, okay, yes, I want all of these. But then when I actually picked up each book individually, I realized the only one that I really wanted to keep was Persuasion. I do love Pride and Prejudice. It's definitely one of my favorite books, but I have a second copy of it. And I have this copy of it, which is a larger version. And I reach for this one more. When I want to read Pride and Prejudice, I grab this book instead of the pocket book. I got rid of Emma simply because I think I've read Emma like twice. And every time I just don't like Emma, the character. I don't like Emma, the character. And so I feel like in the whole list of Jane Austen books, this definitely is not one of my favorites. And then the last one that I have is Jane Eyre. I love Jane Eyre. Like Jane Eyre is everything to me. I absolutely adore it. But once again, just like with Pride and Prejudice, I have a second copy of Jane Eyre, and this is the copy that I grab for the most. And you can tell, like, it is banged up, it is dog-eared, it is like not falling apart, but it is definitely like a used book because I've read this thing so many times. So I think I have more of a connection with this version of Jane Eyre than this little pocketbook, because I don't think I've actually read this little version of Jane Eyre, whereas I've read like this version like 10 times. So I'm keeping this one, and I'm gonna be donating this one. I think I got rid of like 5 or 6 more books from that second wave, so I don't know. I think I'm on to something here. So let me show you what I have. Okay, so these are the children's books. Like I've definitely got like trimmed this down quite a bit. I then have some more kids books here. Some like, classics and some more reference church books for kids. So I'm keeping these ones because I really, really, really want to read them. And when I have time to read them, like I'm trying to come at it from like my whole clothing scenario that I had with clothing that didn't fit me, in the sense that it's like, well, if I get down to that size, I'm gonna be really upset that I didn't have that book. So these are those books that are like, I'm gonna be really upset when I finally have time to read that I don't have them. Mainly and most assuredly is the Alexander Hamilton biography. I'm dying to read this. I wanna read this so bad. I just wish I had the time to do so. The other category though that I realized was a problem for me with my books was books that I have started but haven't finished. In the Life-Changing Magic of Tidying, it says that you should definitely get rid of books that if you've like started them and have never ever finished them. She's like, those are the ones you should like get rid of the most. I have started Fifth Wave like 6 months ago because I couldn't find Night Circus. I had started Night Circus like almost a year ago, but then I lost it. I couldn't find it anywhere, so then I grabbed the Fifth Wave to start to read. And then when I started reading Fifth Wave, Yes Please came out, and so I grabbed that one. So like my attention was torn between the three of these, but I was honestly looking for Night Circus and I could not find it anywhere. Turns out it was downstairs with our board games. Go fig. These three books I'm definitely keeping, even though I have like partially read them, and I know you're not supposed to, but I'm keeping those ones. I thought I was done, but then I remembered that I had some books down here in my craft room. Slash filming room, which was kind of like her first step in saying like you have to have everything in the same area. So I know I have some books down here. I'm gonna gather them up. I think most of them are like craft books or like drawing books. So I'm gonna grab all my books and I'm gonna take them, and I'm gonna grab all my books and we can do the process again. I don't have very many down here. I think I have like maybe 10 books down here, but of course we'll find out. Hold on. Okay, so these are the books that I had down here in my room. They're really small, like there's not that many, but I'm gonna go through all of these and figure out what I wanna keep, what I don't wanna keep, what I can get rid of, all that jazz. This is what's left. This is all the stuff I'm gonna be keeping. So the only like thing that I'm kind of like, I don't know what to do is she says that you're supposed to keep all like things together. So all books go together, all clothes stay together, things like that. So this is my conundrum. These are still books, but they're like my craft books. So do I keep them down here with my crafting things, or do I bring them upstairs with my books? Because I feel like upstairs, I will see that I have them, yes. But if I see that I have them, like if I wanted to, let's say, find a Christmas decoration that I want to make. I find it in this magazine upstairs. I end up bringing this magazine down here to work on it though. So that's why I'm like, should I just leave my craft books down here, or do I genuinely follow the rules to the T and keep all of my books together? I don't know. I think I'm just going to leave them up here, or leave them down here, because that's where I'm going to be using them, is down here. So these are going to stay down here. All I have to do now is go and organize the books upstairs and put them back on the shelf, but that's going to take like literally 2 minutes because I have like 10 books now, which is really, really nice.
So here are all my books back on the bookshelf. Unfortunately, I forgot to close out this vlog. I am so sorry, but make sure and stay tuned because next we are going to be dealing with important papers. What that means, I have no idea, but stay tuned to find out more.